I generally try not to make my titles super out there, but at the end of the day, that's the only thing I could think of when I finished this manga. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is the show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week I'll be talking about, at last, an actual manga review. I think this is the first manga I reviewed this year, maybe. I wish to do this more frequently, but yeah, things are not really easy right now. Anyways, so today we'll be talking about Tomodachi Game. First off, before I even start talking about anything else, spoiler alert, I'll be talking about everything that happens in a more of a summary way, so not really getting into the details, because for the most part I really forgot, I don't actually care about many of the details that happen in the midst of the story, but at the same time it is a mystery and more a psychological kind of drama kind of story, so I would advise that if you have the inclination, the idea to watch it or read it for that matter, please do it now. It's not that long. The anime only has, I think, 12 episodes and no OVAs, and the manga has 26 volumes with 127 chapters, which again is not that long considering everything. So if you want to read it before listening to this, please do. I'll be spoiling every other revelation that happens in the later stages of the story, because otherwise I cannot actually analyze it without actually looking into what actually happens. So that being said, let's start with the stats. So Tomodachi Game is originally a manga written by Yamaguchi Mikoto and illustrated by Sato Yuki, and it started the original run on December 2013 and ended on August 2024 on the magazine Besatsu Shonen Magazine. It is important to actually say that Yamaguchi Mikoto is one of my favorites, if not my favorite authors, mangakas of all time, but this is one of the few series that he made that I cannot in good faith recommend. Before I start with this, just to talk about the J-drama and the anime really quick. So the J-drama was originally run from April 2017 to April, so basically 3-4 weeks in April 2017 with 4 episodes. There was a live action movie, I didn't know that came out in June 2017, and then the anime that came out in April 2022 and ended in June 2022 with 12 episodes made by Okuruto Noboru. I don't actually know much of this studio, because for the most part I think they are really new. So they are basically founded in 2017 by ex-David production staff, so there's that. So really new studio, and one of the first things they done was the anime for Tomodachi Game, and I will get to the fact of having an anime a bit later, but the anime, I think it's the symptom of a greater problem with this series. So let's start with the story. So basically before I even start with the story, actually, let me just talk about a bit of the author, because for the most part, Yamaguchi Mikoto is one of, if not the author that I finished the most mangas of, talking about a single author. Also because I wanted to actually do, let's say, a video, more in-depth episode of the podcast about talking about him specifically, and later on talking about other mangakas that I really like, and talking about their writing style and the kind of stories that they tell. Yamaguchi Mikoto is one of the most prominent mangakas that follow the, let's say, the no draw model. So he always partners with other visual artists to actually illustrate his works in manga. The one manga that he actually illustrated himself, I think were two different mangas. The first one was his first one, so Shinigami-sama ni Saigo no Onegai, and the second one was Scumbag Loser. I think both are illustrated by him, and after Comeback Loser, he never actually illustrated something himself. That is not in detriment of the story. I think that for the most part, he always partners with really talented people. And in the case of Tomodachi Game, it was Sato Yuki, and for the most part, the art is pretty good, really nice and awesome. But and I will blame this on him specifically because he takes care of the writing. I think that due to the nature and the way that the story goes on, I think that art takes a hit later on because they repeat a lot of stuff that already they use the same gag most of the time, the same tropes for the most part, and this comes up as getting kind of repetitive and not really getting much more experimental than the first few arcs tell, let's say. Special shout out, and talking about a bit of his other works, special shout out to the artists on Shinigami-sama ni Saigo no Onegai o RE, that was Kodai Kabuto, or Kabuto Kodai, I don't actually know this, but especially shout out to this one specifically, and my favorite artist that he is partnered with still, DP, that he worked on Gun Clover and he's working on with in Game of Familia or Family Game. Really nice art from these two. Special shout outs also to all the other artists. I will not talk about the one that there's only one manga of him that I will not talk about, that is that too, because kind of creeps me out, bro. But easy to say, all of the artists that he partners with throughout his writing history, really nice, and also here in Tomodachi Game. So talking about Tomodachi Game specifically, so Tomodachi Game is a kind of a mystery psychological kind of thriller, let's say, and it is based on these 5 friends. So you got your main character Katagiri Yuichi, and then the main girl Sawaragi Shiho, Mikasa Tenji, Shibe Makoto, and last but not least, Kokorogi Yutori. Those are 5 friends that they are basically normal high school students, and they are going into the famous class field trip to, I think that they mention it at the very start, I think it's either Hokkaido or Osaka, something like that, but for one reason or another, the money for the trip gets stolen, and so to get back the money but also gamble a bit with their lives, and this is the first part where that Yamaguchi Mikoto writing comes on, they get involved in this Tomodachi Game. And Tomodachi Game the concept is pretty simple. It's kind of like if they got somewhat a clandestine game show where they pit friends against each other with that as the, let's say, both the prize and the punishment. So the total amount I will not remember because it is a really niche detail of the beginning of the story, but they get each, let's say, 200k yen or $2,000, something like that, of that each, because the original debt was the total sum of it all, and now they are competing against each other to actually get this whole money back. So they each start with this debt, and they can get more debt, and people can kind of get away from this debt. Basically, they get all their debt together and split it equally, and basically it's a elimination game where the loser gets all the debt and everybody else gets forgiven for their debt. And so it comes up later on that more debt is added because one person's holding information, because most of them will get and the whole threat in this whole thing is to be basically cursed with an unpayable amount of money. And this, I think, is something that is really difficult to transmit to people outside of Japan. I think me as an outsider, as a Western, I have a really different notion of that in terms of the way that I see it because of my country and stuff. And I think that for the most part, most people will have different conceptions of this and different ways to interpret the numbers that they show, because at the end of the day, each country, we learn to live with our bank system for each country since we are born, more or less, and everything kind of works different depending on the country you live in. So I think that the gravity of the amount of that they incur in this game is different for each person that reads it, because we see the word in different ways. Not only that, but from the very beginning, and this is a thing that me as someone who read a whole lot of the same author, this is pretty safe. This is pretty not really that impacting, that gives me the chills, much like of his other works, because and here's the thing, right? So why do I not recommend Tomodachi Game? Why do I think that Tomodachi Game is not that great of a manga, and at some point of an anime? I'm assuming the anime ends where I think it ends. That is the end of the first Tomodachi Game before the group stage, because after they finish the first Tomodachi Game, someone is eliminated. I don't actually remember who, but then we have the group stage, then some stuff happens outside of the game, and then we have the arc where they go to the adult Tomodachi Game, and the adult Tomodachi Game is separated between the prison, the yacht, and then the island, and then the final stage where the story just goes on for so long. Oh my god. And the whole thing, I think the anime ends by the end of the first Tomodachi Game. I think. I have not watched it. I frankly do not have the desire to watch it. I know for a fact that the opening, at the very least, sounds nice, though I never actually even watched the visuals for the opening. I only listened to the opening once, and for the most part, the whole thing, when compared to the other works of Mikoto Sensei, this is pretty safe. This is pretty, especially at the beginning, when nothing that really gets really deep in the characters is revealed. Like later on, we discover the whole backstory about their parents, and then how much Yuichi is actually not only a bad motherfucker, but also a really bad person in general, and also how his story is a whole lot of fucked up. But easy to say that from a standpoint that from someone that actually read, not only so for instance, I think the first time that I stumbled upon Yamaguchi Mikoto was on Makenki, because I think he worked on a part of the story of Makenki, and after that he went on to go and do Gun Clover and some other stuff. And from reading all his stuff, he has a knack for this kind of mystery, kind of psychological drama, kind of who's the real killer kind of story. And then also he has the tendency, and for the most part you would say even it is not one of his works if it does not engage with some really fucked up stuff, so much so that and I need to use the, let's say, the platform safe terminology here, so sorry, but the unaliving, qualified unaliving, self-unaliving, unrequested intercourse, and goes on from there. It is always really heavy. All his works are really heavy. I think that when I reviewed Gun Clover, I had this warning that it gets really heavy, really heavy from the middle to the end, especially because they go on with a whole lot of child related stuff. When you get together children and war, it gets really fucked up, and it goes on with all his works, all of Mikoto Sensei's works. It always goes on that direction. He's never afraid to actually dive into really dark topics. And for the most part, I think that one of the factors that I don't like in Tomodachi Game a lot is that it is one of his works, but it always feels, especially from the beginning to the middle of the story, until I think I would say a bit before the first stage of the prison arc, it always feels like they are holding back on actually doing the heavy stuff, because from his other works I can see that he's never afraid of, like, in this case it's not about he himself, but he instructs the artists, and the artist is never afraid in his other works to show a whole lot of blood, whole lot of violence, whole lot of really sometimes extreme stuff and so on and so forth. And in Tomodachi Game, although they always tease a lot of that kind of stuff, they never really show it, and it feels like, to me, and I at this point I have deviated completely from the story, but stay with me here. I know this is a bit ranty and I'm going all over this place, but hold on, I'll get somewhere. The thing is, right, every time they tease a whole lot of stuff, and this is from the very beginning, they tease of people doing wrong stuff from the get-go on high school, from drugs to paid dating and so on and so forth, and it goes into the directions that you think it would go, but they never actually go there. They kind of tease it and then just throw it in the wind. Like, it is something that we are talking about, but I don't want to show it because there's some kind of constraint, and I feel like, and here's is a theory, I cannot, this is my opinion, I cannot prove it whatsoever, but it is something that if someone came out and said it was done like this because of XY, I would say, yeah, I got it. I think that at some point, and given that this whole manga has been going since 2013, way before the anime, I know that this is not something that actually changes anything in the grand scheme of things, but I think that at some point when they were first like getting on with the story and so on and so forth, given that this is, from what I know, a monthly manga, I think that someone told Mikoto Sensei to hold back on the extreme stuff. I cannot prove it. I think it's just a theory, because given that this is the only work that he has ever done that actually got an anime, I think that there was some kind of filter that they done, because they wouldn't want to show the extreme stuff that other works that he has done in the past show. Even if you take like Game of Familia, that's actually ongoing right now, or even Tomaroa, that was finished around the time that this one was. Those two, for example, are two works that never actually got even this the lightest idea on someone to actually get an anime adaptation. And for the most part, those two, they don't actually hold back on the extreme stuff. They actually go the places that they go, and they are serious in the way that they are serious. That is the first mark that actually tells me that this is not fully written by Yamaguchi Mikoto for the most part. That's what I feel like. It is something of, I know this author's work, I know what he goes into, and now I'm reading this and seeing that he's holding back on the things that he wants to go into, and for the most part this doesn't show itself until they go to the group stage of the Tomodachi Game. But easy to say that they get involved in this Tomodachi Game is something that they get into ad hoc style. It's really impromptu. They are basically forced into it because someone in the group has actually thrown them into it, and basically the whole setup for the first Tomodachi Game at the very least is to discover who actually got them there, who involved them there, who took the money originally, and then from then on we see this whole social deduction game of everybody is lying, nobody actually believes in each other anymore, and from then on we get to actually discover more of the characters through revelations that they don't want to actually talk about, some things that the others didn't know beforehand, and from then on we get the bigger picture as time goes on. This goes on, they finish the first one. I don't actually remember the real end of the first one. I think that at the end, Yuichi, who is, and he shows this at the very beginning, Yuichi is a little bit of psychopath, more or less, because he has that and this is another Yamaguchi Mikoto thing, that his main characters always are super intelligent, but they are really out of line for the most part. So it is always, I think in all his works there are maybe 2 that are not like that, but they're always intelligent but not always out of line for the most part. But anyways, the thing is, Yuichi has in the first Tomodachi game already proven that he's really a psychopath, but he's also super intelligent, and for the most part he uses, and this is a thing that comes up more and more in the manga as the story goes on, but it is the discussion of whether the ends justify the means, because for the most part, if given the chance, Yuichi will stoop to, let's say, a lower level to gain an advantage on other people. And for the most part, most of the time, let's say, it always gets blown out the window because there's always someone else that's betraying either him or the group itself. And the whole message, the whole idea of the manga as the story goes on is whether anyone in this one group of friends, this group of 5 friends, if they will choose to believe in their friends or in the money that they are promoted. Because the first Tomodachi game is basically to clear a debt and not earn money really. The second one, the group stage, that is against other high school students more or less, it is also to clear a bit of debt that there's left, but also to earn money. So there's this net positive thing that they go for. And then from then on, when they get involved in the adult stage, it is all about the money. But also in the betweens of all of these stages and so on and so forth, we get to see a whole lot of stuff and actually like understand the idea behind the Tomodachi game. So we get the whole introduction of the past that is involved with all these people. So Yuichi, Shiho, Tenji, Shibe, Yutori, they are all connected by their parents, and from then on we get the whole backstory of their parents drip fed to us for the most part, because some of the revelations that are done are really dragged out, and this is the part that really gets me. So just to summarize this before I get this review way too long, but the first Tomodachi game is basically the presentation of the Tomodachi game, the idea that there is this whole organization that sets up these live streams where people watch other people playing this game with unpayable debt, and how people that lose basically are shunned from society because they are forever cursed with this debt and so on and so forth. And for the most part, nobody ever pays this. There's no way. And even people with money are not safe from this, because for the most part they freeze the money that they have outside of the game and then get this debt, and basically they get they get nullified. Basically the idea is that they grow, the losers get a debt so big that there's no money in the world that could actually pay it off. And the people that actually start with a big debt and get split between all the participants, if they get to win, they get outside of that debt. So basically it's there's always this idea that the winner can clear any debt that they have, and the loser will get all the debt of the whole group. And the idea is basically that the winner is necessarily fucking over the loser. With that said, there are a whole lot of things that happen. The first Tomodachi game already gets a whole lot of stuff in motion. So for instance, I think from the first game, I think Shiho, for one reason or another, is outside the story for the most part for the foreseeable future, until they actually clear the group stage. I don't remember actually why, but she gets outside of the story for some reason. And then we get Yuichi always showing off more of his expertise, more of his ability to deceive people, to con people into schemes and plans and stuff, and he always comes out on top. In all of the arcs, there is at the very least 1 or 2 moments where he gets the upper hand for something that he planned like 100 steps forward. So this is this kind of story that always gets the, let's say, the dopamine releases always when there's this big reveal of how he knew that the other people knew that he would do something, and he would do something to counter that, and they would something to counter that, but then they wouldn't know that he knew, and the whole thing is really convoluted in that way. And for the most part, the whole story goes around and does this all the time. And this, I think, is the second part where I do not recommend this, because at some point this gets really repetitive. And this is a thing with, again, talking about the author, most of his works are really short. It's not that short, but somewhat short. I think they're between like 70 to 90 chapters max for the most part, and this one being the longest one, I think 127 chapters. They really padded it out for no apparent reason, but I'm not here to discuss padding at this point, but let's get to it. So it's really repetitive because he always comes out on top. Not always, not like 100%, but it is, let's say, in a mystery and psychological drama kind of scenario. If I can safely say that the main cast will not be affected by whatever happens, it is not fun because it lowers the stakes. Because if I know for a fact, like let's say they go through 2 or 3 tribulations and Yuichi comes out on top because he planned ahead 100 steps and he always saves everyone. If I know for a fact that in the 4th and 5th tribulation he will do the same thing and nobody will actually be touched because the plot demands it, there are no incentives for me to continue reading, because whatever, man, I know that he will come out on top. I know that nobody will get killed or get the death or actually get out of the story, something like that. And at the point that I noticed that, it just didn't make any sense to actually continue on, let's say. And this is something that happens with, I think at the very least, with mysteries that go on too long, because they keep dragging the whole story forward, and I just want to know who the original traitor is, and then they go on and pile on more circumstance, more stuff, more people. They go on and explain how the whole backstory of most of the group is okay, but also that Shiho's father is a policeman, Tenji's father is a lawyer, prosecutor, I don't actually remember, and for one reason or another they had a dispute with Shiba's father because Shiba's father is a politician, and for one reason or another then we find out that Yutori has a really bad home situation because her mother is both, I don't remember, ill, and also she would used to play around a lot, let's say, and so on and so forth. And then we find out that actually Yuichi has this whole fucked up backstory because we don't actually know his biological mother, and then when he gets a mother is because his father is actually a con man, and he gets every one of the Fred's parents that were his stepmother. Oh my god. So Yuichi doesn't actually have a biological mother from what I can remember, and then he has the biological father, and his biological father is a motherfucker, and he's a con man, a swindler, and then he gets this girl that is, let's say, his stepmother, and it is the one person that Yuichi actually loved, but then his father used her mother and her mother's friends to actually get into a scheme where he would get paid by his mother's friends on the pretext that was the amount that he needed to actually pay the hospital bills because his mother was always in the hospital. And the whole thing kind of comes back to say that Yuichi is the original evil of the whole thing because his father was the cause of the whole Tomodachi Game situation, and then the whole story goes from there. But then we learn more and more that everyone is kind of guilty of something, and the only person that's 100% clean, and this comes up in the ending, and this is a spoiler, the only person that is 100% clean of any sin, of any wrongdoing, of anything, is Shiho. Although she fails at the very end, but I think that is just a fake off just to give more drama to the ending, because also the ending is anticlimactic, but we'll get there. And the whole thing kind of goes around with this. So after the group stage, after Yuichi and Tenji kind of after having a really bad breakdown in the first Tomodachi Game, they kind of make up, and from there they go through the group stage. They get to meet the other guys. I don't actually remember any of the names outside of K. K is rich genius kid, something like the prodigy kid that gets into high school earlier and so on and so forth, that later on becomes one of the secondary characters that actually help Yuichi, and basically has a mini character arc of himself because he starts really not liking people, and by the end he's all love and peace somewhat, at the very least for his friends, and he kind of really likes Yuichi specifically. It's the one reason that he actually changes for one, and for the most part that's the basically everything that happens in the group stage. Then after the group stage we get to the adult stuff, and then from the adult stuff forward the whole thing kind of gets messed up, because then Shiho appears as a part of the administration of the Tomodachi Game, and then we get the revelation that actually Yutori, that at the very beginning she was kind of innocent, kind of frail, kind of damsel in distress kind of character, she's actually the bad guy for the most part, because she actually planned most of the things and involving people into the Tomodachi Game and so on and so forth. And we find out why she is broken, why she is the way she is, and the whole thing kind of goes from there. And then find out that she's actually mixture of, she's kind of a yandere for Yuichi for one reason or another. It's never really like explored, but at the same time it is something that happens, let's say. And for the most part the whole thing kind of goes from there, right? So we go through the adult stage, and a whole lot of stuff happens, from the boat from the prison to the boat to the island, and from the island to the final stage. I will just cut it here and say that a whole lot of stuff is revealed, and then we get to the final stage. The final stage is a whole lot of let's say dry cleaning, laundry. Oh my god, man, they talk so much and nothing happens. The one time that people actually kind of die, they don't actually show that much and just brush it off. It's really annoying that way, but just to give the full picture, right? So and this is the major spoiler. If you don't want it, please stop here. So what actually happened before the time of our main protagonist, what happened with their parents? So Shiho's father, Tenji's father, and Shiba's father, and Yutori's mother were all friends with Yuichi's mother. Yuichi's mother was someone that worked hard and worked while studying for university, because she was from a poor family. She didn't actually have any relatives, so she was alone and trying to live off the dream of studying and working at the same time. Then comes up that she eventually falls sick, and that's when, for one reason or another, Yuichi's father, Shiba Taizen, gets involved with her, and seeing that, he comes up with a scheme together with Yuichi, because Yuichi at this point is it's a child, but he's already like being trained to be a swindler. So he's already, let's say, a bad person. He comes up with a scheme to say to each of his mother's friends, that they need to pay 1 million yen each month to keep her in the hospital, to keep paying for the hospital bills, because they don't actually have the means to actually gather the funds. And the whole thing kind of unravels by that, because month by month, each of the friends are more and more pressured into getting that money, and because they actually love Yuichi's mother and they take advantage of that because they know it, and the whole thing is kind of messed up like that. And at the end of the day, they find out that actually, while Yuichi's father was a motherfucker and was the creator, let's say, of this whole thing, as the story ends and they find out the original sim of Yuichi, because it is teased that he already 18 years of age, he already killed 3 people and so on and so forth, and a whole lot of stuff also happened. It is revealed that actually not only his father was a motherfucker, and Yuichi was the one that killed his father after witnessing him doing his mother, that again was his stepmother. So the one person that he actually loved was being desecrated by the guy that it was his father, but he hated him. And after all that, we then find out that she says something to Yuichi that makes him kill her, and that's basically the ending of the whole thing. The big review is why, at the end of the day, why did you kill your mother also? Because they tease that he killed his mother, but they don't actually give the actual reason for it, and they keep on, oh my god. So basically what comes up is that his mother was also not pure. She chose the money before her friends. She actually faked her illness for more time than was needed, because she knew that her friends were paying for her, and basically they were getting the money to do whatever. And also because she then, after everything that happened, after everyone had dropped out from the game, everyone was kind of broken in their own way, because they went through a whole lot of stuff to get the money to her, taking loans and so on and so forth. After all that, she then chose she wanted to marry the one that was the richest. And then when she said it to Yuichi as a child, Yuichi chose to kill her. And that's the most fucked up thing that happens the whole manga, although they go on so many other stuff that are also a whole lot of messed up. And that's basically the big review of Tomodachi Game. By the end, the reason why Yuichi killed his mother. And then, as a cop-out answer to whether or not they would choose, after knowing everything that he went through, to defend them. Because this is the thing, right? So it all comes down to, I would say, interpretational semantics. And again, whether or not the end justify the means, because it all comes down to this by the end. Yuichi does a whole lot of fucked up stuff by the end of the game to then clear all of the debt from everyone in the game, but he cannot tell anyone that he's doing it, and he does a whole lot of fucked up stuff to get to that end, to eliminate anyone that would be an obstacle to him. And everyone around him sees him as the villain, and he's okay with that. But then when he does save everyone, nobody actually comes for his aid, because he gets shot by the end, and nobody actually goes to actually get him first aid and so on and so forth. But then they get the review that he saved everyone by the end, and the whole thing kind of feels really scummy. Because at the end of the day, he was broken, but he was trying to get everybody that wasn't broken like into safety, but then everybody kind of abandoned him. And at the same time, when they abandon him, there's no like real stakes for it, because at one point they fake out that he's dead, he needs to go through surgery, and maybe he's not coming back. But he comes back, and whatever, like they go on and basically the end is anticlimactic because nobody dies, nothing actually happens. It comes out as just, yeah, that was fucked up, but we're still alive somehow. And this is the thing that gets me with this series. I can't really describe how much they drag out the final revelation by the end. How much they drag the whole thing out. Oh my god. Because to first reveal who the actual boss of the Tomodachi Game is, to then go through and say what the hell happened back then that made Yuichi kill his mother, and then to reveal from hindsight that everything was orchestrated by one and then the other took advantage of this first plan and just lived it out, and then chose to betray them at the end. It is really bad writing in that way. I think that I don't know whether or not it was requirement to keep on going. I don't know whether or not it was some kind of outside pressure. I don't know what the hell happened, but I think like this should have ended so much earlier, and at the same time the story does not fit the model, because the more that Yuichi proves himself to be the superior player, to know how to uptake someone and so on and so forth, they do it more and more, and it comes up that there are no risks, there are no stakes, and by the end of the story, that's what I feel. That's why I do not recommend this. Because by the end, nothing happened. Nothing actually happens. The whole thing, there's no threat. There are no stakes to the game, actually. That is such and I think that this is the thing about that I was talking about, where I think the interpretation comes from person to person, but the threat of the death is so minuscule in the grand scheme of things that it doesn't really get much, like, it doesn't feel like a real threat, you know? And from that, it really gets me, right? So it really, like, there's nothing here. We could have gone on with our lives and just whatever. The whole story comes up as nothing really, and that's why I don't recommend this. And before I start to ramble more about this, oh my god, this review is such a mess. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in. And I hope you guys stick around for next time. Bye.